Happy Tuesday morning, everybody. Mike here in the youth room with some thoughts for the day. You know, in my devotional time, I've started to read through 2 Peter. And in chapter 1, Peter says some incredible things. He begins this letter after a brief greeting by saying that God's divine power has given us everything we need for life and for godliness. It's an incredible statement that God has given us everything we need to live a life that is pleasing to Him. I'm going to talk about that another day. But this morning, I want to take a look at what Peter says in 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 13 and following, where Peter says that as long as he is in the body, he is going to do his best to remind people of the things that God has done and to remind people of the things that God has laid on Peter's heart to share with them. But he also says, I know that my time in this body is short, because he knew his time to die was coming quickly. And so Peter wanted to make sure the people who would read this letter that we call 2 Peter would know the things that they needed to know. And the next thing Peter does is he reminds people that the things he's been teaching and the things that he is saying are things that he experienced. They are things that he saw personally, that he was an eyewitness to the things that Jesus Christ did. He was an eyewitness to the things that God had done. Made me stop to think about, what am I sharing with people? What am I sharing with people? None of us know how much time on this earth we have left. None of us know how long we'll live. We have a limited amount of time to try to share with people who God is. And one of the best ways that we can do that, again, is by sharing with people what God has done in our lives. How has God impacted my life? That's what I can share. How has God impacted your life? And what are you doing to share those things with people? Many of you in the youth group have heard my testimony many times of how God worked in my life and has continued to work in my life. If you've been watching these videos the last 2 months, you've seen a lot of things that God has been bringing to my mind and reminding me. We can all share about Christ because we all have experience with Christ. We can all share about the goodness of God and God's love and God's forgiveness because we know those things. We have experienced those things. So do your best to be like Peter. While you have breath, while you still have life in your body here on earth, do your best to share your experience with God with others. We don't have to come up with crazy schemes. We don't have to come up with amazing analogies. What we need to do is say, you know what, this is what God's been doing in my life. This is how I know God is real. This is how God has changed me. This is how God makes a difference in my life. A lot of you right now have friends that are not dealing with the pandemic as well as you have been. And the reason for that is because their hope is just in temporal earthly things. But when we understand who God is and we understand eternity, we will understand that some of the things that are disappointments to us now, 10,000 years won't really matter because we'll be in heaven with God. Use your relationship with God to even help your friends now during this time where there's so much disappointment, so much frustration, so much fear in our culture. Use your experiences with God to help point people to Christ, to help them understand, I'm dealing with the pandemic because of who Jesus Christ is and because of what Jesus Christ has done in my life. Be like Peter. Use your experience with God. Use the things you have witnessed in your own life that God has done to help point others back to Him. Just some thoughts for a day. As a reminder, I love you. Most importantly, God loves you. I'll see you next time.